go ahead and, I mean, people are starting to file in, and I guess we can kind of ramble a little bit too to kind of get going here. Um, the whole idea actually for this was sort of posited to me by one Josh Reed, talking to him this summer over because I support Haltom High, and it was one of our mini conferences during those early stages about Chromebooks, what can they do, what can they not do, so on and so forth. And he had this really cool idea about a conversation that he would like to see happen, or a class that he would like to attend. And it was basically a reflection of what we've been through. And I guess, I mean, we're going to have some, this is kind of the last one, and I would expect that there's going to be many overlapping Venn diagrammy circles of topics that we've discussed for this Innovative Learning Bites series. And I know yesterday you guys talked a lot about what we're going to talk about today, but we were talking Tuesday about, if you attended the Tuesday one, I know some of you did, about the differences between blended learning and emergency remote teaching. And an article that Tony and I had seen, a blog post actually from George Koros about the differences. And what he was basically saying is that what we're doing right now is not blended learning. What we're doing right now is emergency remote teaching. So we really sort of talked Tuesday about the differences between that emergency remote teaching and what might be blended learning, because one of the things that digital learning has experienced and kind of had to combat during this pandemic is the maybe erroneous belief that, just sort of recompiling a worksheet digitally, all of a sudden I'm blending, right? So we've kind of had to, we want to propagate some different knowledge about what those things are. But so today I kind of wanted to take some time and reflect from our experiences in this since March, since basically, so we had spring break, right? And then we had second spring break. I didn't have second spring break. We worked our tails off that week, putting together templates and stuff like that. But then after that, we actually you guys started in delivering content to kids. And so that's kind of what I want to think about, is that time up until now, because I know that things are starting to close down now. So, and I wanted this to be a roundtable discussion, not sort of a stand and deliver kind of content thing. So I brought some friends in to kind of deliver their experiences, but that's certainly not experience. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't contribute, because this is really intended to be a roundtable discussion about our experiences. And so my hope is that we would kind of almost PLC style talk about our experience the last, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, whatever. And what that means, obviously, is we want to talk about the things that went really well, things that maybe we would like to take with us into a digital adventure in the classroom later, right? I had several teachers that I've been trying to get on Canvas for a couple of years, and all of a sudden when they were forced to do it, they're like, oh my gosh, I love this. I'm going to keep doing this, right? That's certainly not everybody's experience, but it is a few people's experience, right? So I want to take the good, but I also I don't want to leave the bad out either, because I think the bad is just as instructive and just as much of a learning opportunity as the good. So I want to talk about the good and the bad, and what you see going forward, and what you can take good, and then also what you can learn from and improve on in the future. So does anyone want to go ahead and jump in and start us off? I'm just going to go ahead and pick Karen. She's one of the people that I invited to come.
Thanks, Owen.
Yeah, no problem.
I'm Karen Callis, Birdville High School. I teach education and training classes. And a few things yesterday, I heard a number of things over and over as we broke out into our rooms. And so I'll just put those things on the table because I think all of us will agree on some of those things. What I learned is that I need a whole bunch of stuff from the district so that I can figure out in my mind what I'm going to move forward with. I do use Canvas heavily, and I used it through COVID learning, and so everything was on there. But I do need things like, I need online classroom management things, like I need procedures for checking in to Zoom meetings or whatever we're going to do, blah, blah, blah. I need, how are we going to do their attendance? Because you can't ghost me. I need rules for Zoom. We had to make rules for Zoom after I got started with, you can't show up in your pajamas. You can't show up eating breakfast. Your screen has to be on at least 50% of the time so I can see that you didn't just walk away and go do something else. You have to look at me during that time and use some good audience that kind of stuff. I need some guidelines on that. Are we supposed to use Zoom? Do we have to record that if we're using that with students? For years we had been texting students, then finally Birdville came out with, everybody needs to use Remind. Okay, well that gave me a protocol on what I was supposed to do. And so I use Remind now with everyone. So are we supposed to use Zoom or something else like Google Meets or whatever? Tell me what the rules are so I know what we're supposed to do. What are school hours? At the high school level, I can't join your Zoom because I'm working. Okay, but you don't get up till 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So what are we going to do about that so kids understand that? Are we going to have umbrella internet for everybody? Or
that's a good one.
What are we going to do with that? What about textbooks? Most of mine are online, but I have a new prep coming in. I've got to figure that out, as far as that goes. How do we deal with things that are heavily hands-on topic areas like auto tech, animation, my internship that works with kids, those types of things that have those components in it. What do we do with those classes? Choir, band, that type of thing. So how are we going to have to reframe that so that we can move forward? But my biggest thing that I learned is I'm a rule follower, and I want some of those rules in place because it really irritates me, and I feel really bad all the time when I get my hand slapped when no one told me what the rules were up front. And I want to keep moving. And so I started using wiki spaces years ago and putting everything in there, and then, oh no, we're not going to use that. We're using Canvas. Okay, that's fine, but let's be proactive on that end instead of us having to undo everything and then redo everything, because that wears me out. So that's kind of what I've learned, and I can't wait to get some of that stuff before August 1st, hopefully by July 1st, so that I can work during the summer.
Oh, those are
supposed to be positive.
No, it's wonderful. I think that's stuff that, and I was over here writing things down like I was taking notes, because what you said is wonderful. And when you said stuff about procedures, what it reminded me of was Harry Wong, because I'm a big Harry Wong disciple. And, Harry Wong talks about the first weeks of school, you need to rehearse procedures. And with this new sort of, I guess, online or virtual mode that we're using, we probably need to create those procedures as well, just like we would with our classrooms. That's an awesome point.
Well, Owen, every week I found out one thing positive that I have done right that's been a beating every year. And I do have the luxury of having a set of 30 classroom MacBooks. So, we get to use that. But every year we start with Geek Week, and it's just about, 10 minutes. 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 It's just about, 10 min how do you log, what do you do first, and how do you log in, and what, how do you log out of your Google account so no one else can get into it? How do you do, it's all about protocols of using stuff. And we're going to have to do the same thing with Chromebooks or whatever devices possibly the kids may have, but it's getting them used to that. The biggest negative that I had during COVID learning, I was really glad the kids knew where to go, what to do. That was great. The biggest blunder was when Google changed their sharing protocol just a week or so ago, and I had put the directions of how to do that exactly so they could submit that in Canvas, and then now they had that little restricted button that you have to take off, so I had to redo all that. But kids, they aren't going to go back in and relearn something right in the midst of something. So that was my biggest thing was, Google, could you have waited till July 1st to do that?
And that's something you'll never be able to control. Right. When a big company like that is going to do an update to their system, that's just, man, I'm right there with you. That's one of the most frustrating things about working with technology is that your lack of control when it comes to the LMS system, the people who created the LMS system, the new operating system that needs to be uploaded so it can run smoother. That's rough. That's not fun.
For sure. It really, what it does is it kind of takes us back to, it's basically like being a first-year teacher all over again. Because one of the things that I've been doing this job for 7 years, not here, but in other districts as well. And one of the things that I've always tried to combat is the fact that people don't know what they don't know, right? And I think that rule applies here too. And just like first year teaching, we don't know what we don't know until we get in there and start doing it. And that is extremely frustrating, especially if you are, a 20-year veteran and you are used to a certain level of excellence or decorum or a certain level of things going how you want them to go, all of that stuff. Absolutely. We kind of have to be very patient and support ourselves and each other however we want to do, whether that is Zoom happy hours or whatever, right? So let me see.
I put a quick note in the chat.
Okay.
As far as what our team did, I'm a team of 3 teachers at Porter Elementary teaching gifted and talented students. And we came up with a written Zoom expectations. We emailed it to parents.
Oh, that's nice.
We posted it in Google Classroom. And then during our first meeting, we went over the expectations. Grant you, we didn't have full participation because at our location, we had 203 students. And I think that our highest Zoom was just under 40 participants. So we let them all know when they came, as just a quick reminder, remember our expectations, they're posted in Google Classroom. And things got a lot better after we told them, we're going to put you back in the waiting room until you're ready. And we put several in the waiting room and they came back and they were ready. So that's one of the things that we did.
Yeah, I really appreciate that, Sandra. And I think that your experience is also very illuminating with this group as well because of the clientele you teach, right? Mm-hmm. And so I think that your group expects, perhaps from our perspective, some more behavioral scaffolds than a more abled or whatever you want, whatever the correct term is. And so I would love to see your Zoom expectations because I think even more even other classes I think would benefit from seeing those as well. So
yeah, one of our teachers at the Green Valley site came up with it, and then we tweaked it for our needs, and it worked well.
Excellent.
I can email it to you if you like.
Oh, I would love that. And what I'll do is I will, before we log off, I'll maybe take a screenshot of everybody that's in this, and I can. Would you mind if I shared it with the people that are here?
No, not at all.
Okay, that'd be wonderful too. If that, if that's something, yeah, Karen says that would, and yeah, absolutely. Several people said they'd love to see a copy of it if that's.
Keep in mind, our expectations are for grades 3 through 5. So
Well, sure, yeah.
high school expectations, well, you might have more.
Yeah, you might have more.
But as someone who works at a high school level, you got to start somewhere.
Right.
We see what you're doing down there, and we can use some of those expectations just to remind them to get into line. Because I'm still telling kids to keep hands and feet to themselves. It's 10th grade. They should know by now. They don't.
Yeah, they should.
So it's okay.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and I think a lot of times expectations for elementary kids don't necessarily grow out of those expectations, right? I mean, like Josh said, we're still reminding them to not put pencils in each other's ears. They still, are totally motivated by getting a sticker on a paper, things like that. Kids, they're still kids. So, and while we do have some that are more mature behaviorally, we have a whole lot that aren't. So for certain, I think that's going to be a really beneficial thing there. Awesome. Very cool.
Owen, one other thing about the Zoom deal.
Yeah.
I hope that the district is looking at, not knowing what we're going to go back to or how that's going to look. If we have a mixture of being at school sometime and then not at school sometime, like during a week, right now we were kind of the Wild West at Birdville High School with we had a schedule, but you had to sign in for Zoom spots. So everybody wasn't Zooming at the same time. Well, you know how that went. It was like, oh, I have this other class that's much more important than another. There was just so much conflict on that. Plus there's a lot of ghosters running around, so how do you get kids to show up at Zooms?
Oh, that's a good point, right? That's one of the things, going back to first year teaching and hearing Wong, all this stuff is so fundamental. It's like we keep kind of coming back to the same thing. My teaching mentor, when I first started teaching, I'm the idea guy, right? I come up with cool ideas, and where I struggled and probably still struggle is accountability. And so one of the things when I come up with a new activity for kids to do, I always hear Ed, my mentor, my first year teacher mentor, saying, how are you going to keep them accountable? How are you going to keep them accountable? How are you going to keep them accountable? And I think that question is just as relevant with that question, right? So I did want to kind of ask the whole group about Zoom, what they thought about Zoom. I mean, I know some of this, we are getting into some equity issues, and that's fine. I think we can discuss some equity issues. But I think our district, depending on your zip code, is very vast in terms of socioeconomic status and stuff like that, and that affects everything, right? There's a lot of research that talks about that. So, the best practice is to make classes be asynchronous, but there's lots of talk about how sometimes you can bring in those synchronous elements. And in fact, there's an element of gamification even where you show up at a certain time in a certain place for some sort of, gamified nugget for a class, right? And you see that I play games I have a Switch and I have everything. So, they'll have limited time power-ups and bonuses, but you have to show up at this time period. So there are ways to get kids to show up. So what is your experience and what do you guys think about using Zoom as a tool for teaching?
My question about Zoom right now is there something better? And Zoom is cool. There are some cool aspects to it. Everybody likes to do the background and stuff like that. But Microsoft's got their thing now. I know Google Meet has their thing. I'm just wondering if there's a better way to conduct that. But also the other side of it is Birdville just going to go full blown behind Zoom? Because if that's the deal, then it doesn't matter if there is something better or not, right? So the question is, are we staying with this specific system, or do we go and look around and see if there's something better? I think that's probably where I'm at. And to the question of how to get kids to go to Zoom meetings, I don't have an answer. I don't have an answer to that. I have the same question, like, how do you make that happen? But also to a deeper point, and if this gets off the reservation a bit, I apologize. The whole idea of contacting students through this whole thing is nightmarish. And we're going to have a really bigger task at hand where we figure out a way to contact students, contact parents, and know that their phone calls or the phone number we have or email we have is dependable. Because if it's not dependable, well, I may have 130 kids, but if there's only 70 to 80 kids popping on every day, then I can only do so much. I can't make those other 30 kids just appear. I can't.
Well, especially with your numbers being as high as they are,
right,
with the limitation for Zoom based on what Birdville has given us or allowed us, or the basic with 100 max, that wouldn't fit your needs if you could
right.
get everybody in. So we need to look at upping the level of membership or whatever you call it with Zoom, because I know there's other capabilities. I'd love to be able to do the polling and the quiz within Zoom itself, but overall, I've enjoyed using Zoom. We've got a lot of kids that really like to share what they've done, and but again, the way I use Zoom as a gate teacher is different than the regular classroom teacher. We reviewed the activities that they needed to be doing and just kind of briefly touched on them, as opposed to have a full on reading lesson or a math lesson. So I don't know that our situation is the same as many others. Oops.
Yeah, I mean, those are all really, really valid points, right?
My
go for it.
Sorry, I was trying to raise my hand, but my concern with Zoom, so I teach middle school, college and career speech and health at Northridge Middle School this past year. And one of my biggest concerns with Zoom is that, you know, we have 4 or 5 kids in some of our families at home. And so if we think our Zoom schedules are hectic, trying to coordinate those between our kids, and we've had to send home a Chromebook or 2 to a family, and there's only one device for 4 or 5 kids, you're really asking those kids to decide what the best education for themselves is, and they're not mature enough to make that choice. Like, they don't know. They can't say, well, you know, I know that you've got math today at 4 and I've got English today at 4, but I struggle with English, so you go ahead and let me do English, and then you don't worry about math, because you know what I mean? Like, I think that we are asking kids to make decisions they're not equipped to make. And my second concern with using Zoom, beyond the asynchronous aspect of things, is that, you know, I can't control what's happening in my students' houses behind them. I can give them guidelines all day long, and that's not going to keep Big Brother from walking behind your student vaping in the background, or any number of things that we can't control that are going on in their home settings. And for me, that juice wasn't worth the squeeze on that. Like, I would rather, what I did is I got a Google Voice number and I texted my kids like crazy, and I would call them and they knew they could call me. And if I wanted to Zoom individually with them, I would do that. And I was on call on Google Voice, which they love to text anyway. But those were my biggest concerns with Zoom. And then after the fact was thinking, okay, but for the teachers that didn't want to get into this to begin with, I'm afraid people that have made progression into the ages that we're finally like moving into the technological age we should be in as a district, that they're going to think that once we're back to normal, they don't have to worry about this anymore. Like, my concern is teachers looking forward to getting back to worksheets. That was a lot. I'm so sorry.
No, those are all wonderful.
Yeah. Well,
to know Miss Tarver is to know that there are always 10 thoughts going on in her head at any one time as well. And they're all very salient and important thoughts, but there's usually 10 at a time. So For sure. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Josh.
Oh no. I agree with most of everything you said. It's a really tough thing. Actually, what I ended up doing instead of doing classes on Zoom every day was from 9 to 11 in the morning. I was just there, and they would come and do one-on-one conferences, and that was it. I was like, I'm gonna sit here from 9 to 11 and just pop on. I will answer any question you need answered, and that really worked to an extent. I also did the Google Voice thing. The Google Voice thing, I have some issues with, but it worked for what it needed to be. I think my big concern going into the summer is to really perfect and figure out how to make entertaining videos for students that are engaging, that are fun. That way that if this happens again, I can pop the videos up and they can watch something that's entertaining, but also take something away from it and then use Google Forms to like gauge their understanding of what they just saw. I mean, I hate the idea that they're sitting there watching a video or something, but you know, that could be more entertaining and engaging than something I do in the classroom, especially if I get a green screen behind me. Then there's going to be all types of nuttiness. But yeah, I think all that you said, Ms. Tarver, is correct. I also kind of want to touch on a few things just before I hand it off to somebody else. There are 4 categories that I really picked up on in this time. And if you agree with me or didn't agree with me, that's cool too. But we talked about the first one. Contact is of the utmost importance. And I feel like we're going to need help with that from a district level, not just from a campus level. I mean, I feel for my APs and my principal, I know they were working their butts off to contact all the students, and we still have a no contact list. There's like, I think 5 or 6 of my students are on it, but we've got to figure that out. That's probably our biggest barrier that we've got to cross. The other thing I learned is how adaptable we are. And congratulations to all of us, I think, is in order. I mean, we may not have done this perfect, but we all adapted and we all made the changes that we needed to make. And I think that that's commendable and fantastic. I was doing things I didn't know I could do. I can tell you that reading is not dead on a digital level. Here at the end, we did a small book study, and everything, there's audiobooks available, there's PDFs available. We had them journaling at the end here, and it's been great. And I'm really impressed that the kids stuck with it. So, and I think they liked being able to read, which is a shocking statement, given what I had seen earlier this year. The other thing that was tough was letting go. There were several assignments I wanted to do this year that I did not get to do. I probably could have done them, but they're more blended than they are this emergency online teaching. I was talking to Owen about it earlier. For example, we have an amazing poetry unit that I love mainly because I'm such a music buff and I get to throw up lyrics from my favorite band, whom I do not tell them who they are or where the lyrics came from. But the lyrics are such that it suggests that maybe there's a suicide or a murder, and they're vague enough that we analyze the lyrics as we would a poem. And then we have all these other poems that we do too. And then at the end, we have this great digital breakout session as the unit test. But we couldn't do that because that requires you to be in a classroom, build those relationships so that the students can learn as you go. And that's just something that I had to get used to, the idea that I wasn't going to get to do this year. It kind of stunk, but I let it go. And I already mentioned reading's not dead. That's the other thing. That's cool. The written word is not dead. It works digitally as well. So those are kind of the things that I've noticed in what I've dealt with so far. There you go.
Yeah, I mean, a couple things too. I have read just a few articles, Josh, about digital detox, and how if we are forced to use lots of digital devices throughout our day, then we crave more analog experiences. So I agree with you. I think that that sort of psychological phenomenon, whatever it's called, has shown up, and that's what you're talking about, right? I think sometimes when I mean, from the kids' perspective, if we Zoom call, we Zoom call, we Zoom call, and I have 3 Zoom calls, maybe it would be nice to do something to log off for a little while, right? Whether that's listen to a analog record on a turntable. I think that's one of the reasons records are huge again, is because we're digitally detoxing from stuff. Or we pick up an actual book and we read it. Or, I mean, heck, you could even probably marry the two. And I read sometimes at night on my Kindle. I'm reading the Ben Folds autobiography right now on my Kindle. But a couple of other things, too. And I just wanted to touch on some things that other people had said. Ronnie had mentioned a little bit about when we were talking about Zoom, about how Zoom inadvertently provides windows into kids' home lives. And I think that I wanted to just kind of turn that up to 11 because it's a great idea, and it's already at 10, right? So I want to turn it up to 11. One of the things that I think is also a sign of inequity too is if the kids, sometimes kids don't want their friends to see their house, the environment they live in as well. And Zoom, unless you have a computer that has the has the specs to do the background, the virtual background, and the Chromebooks don't, right? I don't even think I think it's the Chromebook app can't even do it yet. So they're forced to show whatever it is behind them unless they want to put up a sheet or something like that. But that is also extremely humbling for kids, and that is another equity issue. I know Karen mentioned umbrella internet too, and that's a huge issue, especially over in the HC. I know, and that's something that we would want to handle. Do you guys, if this happens again, if this sort of pandemic thing happens again, what do you guys see as possible solutions to that umbrella internet, some kind of, a spotty internet thing happening? I think we've all heard about, that kid who went up and sat in the driveway of the Bechtel to get internet access, right? So what are some solutions other than what we're doing right now, right? We did the hotspots, but those weren't even available at the beginning, so on and so forth. So what are some solutions we could provide as a district?
Can we think about approaching the city of North Richland Hills and some of our surrounding areas and corporate people? If we have umbrella internet and it's available to our communities, it makes North Richland Hills a much more attractive place to live when you have that available not only to kids but to adults as well. And maybe as taxpayers and communities, people would want to throw something up for a service like that if we partnered as a district and a community. I don't know. I know there's models out there like that, but it's a possibility.
Oh, I think so too. I used to live in Richardson, and we did something similar to that. When I lived there for like 15 years. The city, and of course the taxpayers, worked with Verizon, and we supplemented Fios. So they came through the entire town and laid fiber everywhere. And part of that was paid by, the city. But I think, that's a great idea. It was a wonderful system. I miss having Fios every single day. But I mean, it ended up helping Verizon get more customers, but it also, we supplemented it. And then I think your idea, Karen, about asking businesses perhaps to kick in is another good idea for that. What other ideas do we have? Yes, Josh.
Well, I was going to say, it needs to be more than NRH, of course, as I think Sandra put in the chat. She said it needs to extend to Hearst, Haltom City, and BISD cities, all the mid-cities. Yeah, absolutely. But that's a great idea. I would say just for a stopgap, just for something that our campuses could do. And this is the only way I could think of, maybe, and you could pull off social distancing here, but you're already opening up some campuses for lunches. Why not just open up campuses cafeteria for internet availability access, for Wi-Fi? I mean, that may not make some people happy, because someone's going to have to be in there and chaperone and make sure that everything works, but you could keep the social distancing. They still have access, and they're at school.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and there are cities around here that have done maybe not exactly that, where they open the schools, but they've done something. And I'm not techie enough to really know how this works, but they've done something to maybe direct the signal a little more into the parking lot to all the schools.
Yeah.
So even the neighborhood schools, like you could just, if you needed to submit an assignment, you could just pull up in the drive of the elementary school that's down the street and submit your assignment, right? That's a simple, I mean, I say it's simple because I don't really understand the depth and breadth. But I read an article somewhere, I think it was in March, about some school district loading up like routers in school buses and having school buses not just drive around, but station themselves in different parts of towns as well, just to kind of stimulate that whole umbrella idea that Karen was talking about.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, I thought it was kind of cool. I think those are very feasible ideas, right? We've got a whole range. Okay, well, let me see. Oh, you know what? I did want to mention this too. So Josh had mentioned the importance of contacting kids. And that reminded me of something we talked about on Tuesday, because we had April May jump on as our interviewee, and she's just finished her doctorate actually in blended learning, right? And so one of the things that she talked a whole lot about is a key to the success of a blended program or any sort of online program is relationships. And if you've not gotten a chance to see April May teach, I said this Tuesday, I'll say it again today. Man, she's phenomenal. I've been teaching for 20 years, and I still love to go just be a fly on the wall in her classroom. It's so good, and I learn something every time I'm in there. But nothing that she does would work if she didn't have those relationships with the kids, right? So how do you do that? If we start off remote, how do you then develop those relationships, the relationships with kids that are so important in order to get things done? So that could be a question for the group as well.
I did something this last week that I know I'm going to do this next year. And that was, and my class load is probably a lot less than yours, Josh, okay? In elementary school where you have the same kids all day, this could be done. But I went and I took senior bags to all my senior interns with balloons and graduation things. And I told them we had our final Zoom, and I went to their houses, dropped it on the door, and then I texted them and said, I'm here. And I stood way back at the end of the sidewalk, or we waved and looked at each other. But I learned so much that I wish I had known about those kids, like where they lived and what it was really like in their conditions, just in that day of driving around. And next year I'm going to try to do 3 or 4 kids a week, and I won't hit everybody, but if I just hit a couple kids a week, especially start out with the ones that I kind of have on my radar that I'm concerned about, it may help me be more tolerable and accepting and understanding of everything they're bringing in.
Absolutely.
Well, yes, I had a comment about that. That's a great idea, except for in elementary school, we were told flat out this year, do not go to their houses. The district told us when we went into emergency online learning that the teachers were not allowed to do drive-bys at their houses or go and see our kids. And that's from an elementary standpoint. So the district's going to have to give some clarification and some changing to help us build some relationships there.
That's definitely a concern, right?
Well, and so maybe that would be something we would just do when not, if we could, if we had smaller classes, before we, like if we go back and then we don't go back. So maybe that's something that I know Ms. Serviente used to come visit us. So maybe we were told specifically, do not drop anything off. Do not go see your kids. That was in March. I don't know if that lightened, but if we did it before we had to shut down again, that would give us some insight.
Absolutely, for sure. Yeah, and Carrie, you had mentioned how frustrating it was to see some being able to do it and some not. One of the schools I support is Halton Middle School, and they had this really wonderful plan. They put together this parade, and then they had put it out and everything, and they were going to go just drive around their attendance areas and just kind of say hi to their kids. And the district put a kibosh on that as well. But it seemed like that same week, I don't know if it was the same day, you turn on the news and surrounding districts are doing that and being lauded for it. So yeah, there is kind of a double standard. I don't know how you overcome that, but it is something that definitely should be looked at for sure.
I had a quick question. You said something about contact and the district was going to help us with contact. Were you talking about what? It was the first, it was Josh?
Josh. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I didn't say
mean by
that. I said we're going to need help with contact. I think it was more of like, this is a concern I have because one of the biggest barriers we were running into was contacting students. So I feel like we need some sort of way, universal for all of us, that we know we can contact the students, we know we can contact the parents, something that's dependable, because nothing's dependable. You just can't rely on email addresses. You can't rely on phone numbers. We need help in that area, I feel like. So
some of the kids would say, oh, my school email isn't working. And in most cases, that was kind of a lie because they didn't read the directions about that. It's, my.birdvilleschools.net/email. They were trying to go in, directly through their portal, which didn't work at all. And then if you would guide them, but they have got to, we've got to somehow get these kids on board too, so they understand what they're supposed to be doing and what their responsibility is, because their easiest answer is, it's just like in the classroom, the kid that when you're working on something, their hands are up all the time without even looking at what they're supposed to be doing. And these kids too. Oh, I don't understand this, so I'm not going to do it. Well, that just cracked me up. They won't read for meaning on how to get things done. Did you have that problem, Josh?
let me tell you, they still don't read directions online learning. It's happening right now. Like, right. I got 4 or 5 emails yesterday. Mr. Reed, I don't think I did it right. Well, did you read the directions? Oh, you didn't. Okay, we'll try. Go back again and read the directions. But yeah, that sort of thing. You can't rely on them to read directions or listen the first time out. But then again, there's the other side of that is they just want that one-on-one time with an adult who will actually take them through it step by step. And there are those kind of learners.
Kathy, go ahead. You're an awesome student, raising your hand, waiting to be called on. I love it.
Well, not just the students. I think we need to, as a district, try to find a way to get the parents to read directions as well. I teach first grade, and they're not helping their kids like they should. I mean, we talked about Zoom attendance earlier, and it's kind of frustrating when our teammate who's the GT cluster has 13 kids attend her Zoom, and I only had 5 at the most. And I've even had parents who I've said, your child's missing this assignment or this work. They haven't done anything this week and it's Friday. And they'll say, oh, well, that's because they're in first grade and third grade is more important. So we're doing all those lessons first. So really need to try to find some way that we can get the parents to understand that all grades are important and get them involved, because first graders have a hard time logging in by themselves from home because they just don't have the access that they have at school.
Did the students or the families with multiple students get more than one device?
No, they were limited to one.
Because there was one family that we had, he was one of 8 siblings, 6 of which were school aged. And being a gate class, it was like, okay, if you get to anything, great. If not, well, we certainly understand, because his regular classroom work definitely took priority over our gate classes. Maybe there should be something in place if you've got X number of siblings that you get an additional device or something, because they obviously needed something like that. That would made things better for them.
Go ahead, Miss Richline, go ahead.
Well, I'm listening to you about, I was just sort of thought, well, maybe, I know we had some students that came up to our elementary school and picked up the paper packet. So maybe that would be the solution for maybe kinder and first, since, you know, maybe their skills aren't so good on the computer anyway. So maybe that might be the solution for the younger grades, is like have them do that.
Except when they came and picked up the paper packet, we haven't seen those paper packets. The district has put them into quarantine, and we have to count on the parents to send us pictures. I've had one child who's picked up a paper packet. I've seen one assignment by a picture, by a photograph, because the paper packets, and I appreciate the district's concern for us, that would be exposing us to the virus if those children have it.
I feel like the students that have at home, if they've got parents that have routines and structure, those students probably tend to do better. And but parents that don't, then I see it doesn't matter if we do it electronically or paper. And
Carrie, you had your hand up too, and then we're gonna finish up. Go ahead, Carrie.
To piggyback, and I actually teach first grade with Kathy, so I have a very similar experience. And I put a question in the chat, and I don't know if it's not answerable or just wasn't seen, but in years past, because they're little, they haven't been able to get their login until sometimes after 2 full weeks of school. So we're like into the 3rd week of school. What I would like to see, at least for the kids that are not brand new enrollees, you know, the ones that start the first week of school, obviously their login wouldn't be ready. But for those that are not brand new kids, I would like to see a usable login that we can start day 1 if we start in the classroom in some capacity, whether it's just a couple days a week or 5 days a week, because of the potential to be going back online. Hopefully we won't, but I think we have to be realistic about the possibility. So I want to be able to start the first day of school with teaching them how to log in, with teaching them the protocols, with reaching out to the parents and helping the parents to know what the platform looks like and everything, so that the expectations, you know, you were talking about earlier about procedures, if we lose 2 to 3 weeks of schooling on expectations with technology, that's a lot for those littles. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, and that's definitely something that that IT could certainly help, and we can pass along that concern as well. It's been stated a few times. But that's, I haven't heard of any changes that are coming down the pipe in terms of that. But I also don't know of any hurdles that might need to be overcome that would prevent that as well. I wanted to, it's already, we're past our end time already, guys. And I think that proves the validity and the value of these kind of discussions. And I hope that we can continue to have these kind of discussions, whether on Zoom or in person or what have you. Thank you so much for giving up your lunchtime and contributing and everything else. And hey, Jeff, if you wouldn't mind hanging out for just a second, I had a question from an elementary teacher that I wanted to get an expert elementary answer on. Since
I'll try to be an expert.
Well, you're amazing, sir. But thank you guys all for spending your lunch and contributing. So thank you, and have a good one, and let us know what else we can do for you.
Thank you for joining us for this Innovative Learning Bite. Remember, if you want to connect with us, you can reach out over social media, Facebook and Twitter, or if you're a Birdville employee, please remember to join the Innovative Learning Bites Kitchen on Canvas. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next time.